Hello once more. I am happy to be with you and to have an opportunity to study God's Word with you today. In this lesson, we are going to be examining Psalm 10. This is the second in a set of lessons concerning Psalms 9 and 10. The first lesson, we examined and summarized, outlined the ninth Psalm, and in this lesson we are going to outline and summarize the 10th Psalm, and then in lessons to come, or a lesson to come, we will look at the Psalm with some application to ourselves and discuss it in the light of Christian doctrine. Now, having said that, let's explain why we are doing Psalms 9 and 10 together. And it is because they are a unit. They are either one psalm, which has been split into two, or they are two psalms, which were always meant to be joined together. The evidence of this consists of, first of all, in the Septuagint, that is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. These are, Psalms 9 and 10 are included in the Septuagint as a single psalm. The Catholic Bible has continued to present it as a single psalm. Protestant Bibles split it apart into two psalms, Psalms 9 and 10. Incidentally, as a side note, this means that the numbering of Catholic psalms and Protestant psalms are different. The content may be practically the same, but the numbering is different. A more important reason, though, to understand these psalms as a single unit is the fact that in the Hebrew, they form a single acrostic. Psalm 9 contains essentially the first half of the Hebrew alphabet as an acrostic, where every other verse begins with a subsequent letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Psalm 10 then continues this acrostic with the other half of the Hebrew alphabet. We also observe that whereas Psalm 9, like so many of the Psalms, has a heading which says to the choir master, according to Muthi Laben, a Psalm of David, Psalm 10 has no such heading. Not completely telling, but it is indicative of the fact that the 10th Psalm is a unit with the 9th Psalm. Now, as we discussed the 9th Psalm, we said that the 9th Psalm presents kind of a viewpoint of a faithful, righteous man after a great victory, perhaps a military victory. And some have associated the 9th Psalm with David's conquest over Goliath. We'd have no indication that that is, in fact, the context of the psalm, but David is dealing with God bringing judgment upon the nations and giving his people victory. The theme and tone of the 10th Psalm is superficially very different. The 10th Psalm is an examination of doubt, confusion, and the assumption by many that God is not going to act in the world. So Psalm 9 presents God acting in the world. Psalm 10 deals with the question, why don't we see God acting in the world? And this is a question that various psalms do indeed handle, and some of them in a manner very similar to the 10th Psalm. And yet at the same time, as we're going to see, the two halves of this single unit form a very complementary picture. And overall, it is a message of faith and confidence. If we were going to outline the 10th Psalm, or if I was going to outline the 10th Psalm, I would first of all suggest it to be outlined thus. Verses 1 and 2 present the dilemma. Verses 3 through 11 present what I would call the arrogance of the wicked. Verses 12 through 15 are the cry of the faithful, and verses 16 through 18 is the confidence of the faithful. Now, having said that, some might suggest verse 1 stands alone and verse 2 begins the new section. But as I kind of read it to myself, I think verses 1 and 2 serve as a good introduction to the psalm, presenting in total kind of the totality of the subject matter of the psalm. All right, so again, verses 1 and 2, the dilemma. Verses 3 through 11, the arrogance of the wicked. Verses 12 through 15, the cry of the faithful. And then verses 16 through 18, the confidence of the faithful. Now, having said that, let's kind of summarize the psalm under this outline. So verses 1 and 2. Why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? In arrogance, the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes they have devised. Now notice in these two verses we have three primary points, and these 3 points form the crux of the rest of the psalm. First of all, we have the dilemma itself, the question. Why, O Lord, do you stand so far away? Why, God, are you not here taking a hand and stopping things that need to be stopped? Why do you seem to be hiding when things are going poorly? And so we have this dilemma, this question. And again, the tone here is very different from that in the 9th Psalm, which is almost completely positive, that I will give thanks to the Lord and I will exalt and recount and sing your praises because you have acted. But here we have this question, why do you stand so far away? Now, if we were going to look at this as a single unit, we would say that the poet, David, has presented his confidence, and now he is presenting what came before the confidence. But if we just take it as a whole, or as for itself, Psalm 10, we have this confusion, this question, why does God not seem to be helping? Then in verse 2, we have we have the arrogance of the wicked, the behavior of the wicked. In arrogance, the wicked hotly pursue the poor. And here we have a summation of the problem. We have the wicked man, does not care for God, maybe even doesn't believe in God, and in his arrogance, in his assumption, God is never going to do anything, he takes advantage of people who have no defense. Thus, we have the wicked man acting badly because he doesn't think God's going to do anything. And we're going to see in verses 3 through 11 this arrogance expounded upon, with David telling us various ways in which the wicked are acting. And then we have kind of the desired outcome. Let them, that is, let the wicked be caught in the schemes they have devised. Let there be a judgment. And as we're going to see beginning in verse 12, though the psalmist expresses apparent doubt in verse 1, he is confident God is going to act. We should not read this psalm assuming that the question, why do you stand so far off, is reflective of reality. Rather, the question is reflective of the doubt that sometimes plagues people who are stuck in a moment. In the moment, we do not see God acting, and because of that, some assume God will never act. So, the dilemma, verses 1 and 2, which brings us then to verses 3 through 11, where David talks about the arrogance of the wicked. The wicked boast of the desires of his soul, and the one greedy for gain curses and renounces the Lord. In the pride of his face, the wicked does not seek him, that is, seek God. All his thoughts are, there is no God. His ways prosper at all times. Your judgments, and here the psalmist is speaking to God, your judgments are on high, out of his sight. As for all his foes, he puffs at them. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, I shall not meet adversity. His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity. He sits in ambush in the villages. In hiding places he murders the innocent. His eyes stealthily watch for the helpless. He lurks in ambush like a lion in his thicket. He lurks that he may seize the poor. He seizes the poor when he draws him into his net. The helpless are crushed, sink down, and fall by his might. He says in his heart, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. The wicked here, as we read through these verses, again is assuming there is no God and there is no judgment. Because of this perception, an erroneous perception on his part, feeling there is no judgment, David shows that there is no incentive on his part for love or kindness or a correction in his behavior. Because he thinks there is no God, he thinks he will never be brought to account. Notice verse 6. He says in his heart, I shall not be moved. Throughout all generations, I shall not meet adversity. He is assuming that his wicked behavior is going to keep him strong forever. And again, because they do not see judgment now, they assume they will never be called to accounting for their behavior. It is, I think, telling that as David talks about the arrogance of the wicked who stands in opposition to God, the wicked shows his wickedness by taking advantage of the helpless. Because he thinks there is nobody who is able to call him to account, he's acting in a way out of cowardice. And in that cowardice, it is only fitting that he doesn't direct his ire and his mischief and his wickedness towards those who are stronger than he or as strong as he. Instead, he, verse 8, watches for the helpless. He murders the innocent. He seizes the poor, verse 9. Verse 10, the helpless are crushed. He goes after those that can't protect themselves. And he thinks there's nobody who is there to protect him. God is not going to act because he doesn't even believe in God. And in this we see the arrogance of the wicked. Anytime that men are brought to an assumption there is no power greater than ourselves, there is no God, we, moved with pride, are going to be moved into wickedness such as this. We are going to think that we are the ones who must take care of ourselves, and might will make right, and therefore we give up compassion and mercy and love and kindness. But the arrogance of the wicked is mistaken. In our pride, we're missing reality. And the psalmist has confidence in God, which is why in verses 12 through 15 we have then the cry of the faithful. Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up your hand, forget not the afflicted. Why does the wicked renounce God and say in his heart, you will not call to account? Notice here the attitude of the wicked, which is shown in verses 1 through 11, is very different from the attitude of the psalmist himself. Why does the wicked renounce God and say in his heart, you will not call to account? But you, God, do see, for you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. You have been the helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked and evildoer. Call his wickedness to account till you find none. The cry of the faithful in verse 12 is arise, that is God, move, lift up your hand, that is God, act, and forget not the afflicted. God, remember your people, remember the helpless. The faithful man knows there is a God. The faithful man wants God to act. The faithful man knows there will be an accounting. The faithful man wants the helpless to be defended and knows God is the one to do it. And then we come finally to the last section of the psalm, verses 16 through 18, the confidence of the faithful. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations perish from his land. O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed, so that the man who is of the earth may strike terror no more. The faithful man has confidence. God is king, and the nations will be judged. And here we come back to the theme of Psalm 9. Psalm 9 is the nations are in opposition to God. God is not just going to punish individuals. God is going to act in the world against nations because God is king. The nations are under him. We have confidence that God does listen to us. Verse 17. Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. And God is going to act. He will strengthen their heart. He will do justice. Verse 18. God will defend those who have no other defender. Okay, this brings us then to the conclusion of an overview of Psalm 10. Again, in our next lesson or two, we are going to examine how these psalms complement each other, talk about some of the application to ourselves, making points relevant to us today, and we will also talk about how this psalm, or these psalms, depending on how you want to view them, how they relate to Christ and to his church. So, until next time, I hope that this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to our next lesson. God bless you and have a great day.